And we are live. It took like a couple extra seconds today. Hi, welcome everybody to another weekly FreudenFreude live podcast. And we will continue to bring you content to help you grow and develop as a leader and as a person.
Hi, I'm Sandra Corona,
And I am Claudia, and we
and we are
coach.
coaches.
Go ahead.
Well, hi. I am a coach for leaders for the neurodiverse community and for young leaders.
And I am a professional coach working with professionals, corporate leaders, as well as their teams in tech and beyond. So today we decided on a topic about, and it's ruminating and nostalgia. So I realized that maybe not everybody just seeing the title of it would necessarily relate it to coaching, but it's actually very, very much related to coaching. And so hopefully those who are going to listen in today are going to see why this is something that we encounter a lot in our clients and maybe possible ways that we address it. What made you kind of amenable to this topic?
A lot of people suffer from social anxiety, from situations that you don't feel uncomfortable with. And after you have left the social event, the place, or you sit down afterwards and you start thinking because there's nothing else you have going on. You suddenly start thinking about what happened. Why did this person say that? Why did they do that face? Are they mad with me? We start thinking about things that we simply just have time to think about. And it creates this anxiety, right, in us that lets us doubt about who we are, what we're doing, how we react, etc., etc. So we feel the need to study and analyze ourselves and those around us. And that is a result of it. Rumination is having the time to think about events that have passed and just like cows.
Yeah, your dogs are having a lot of fun with your curtain
Oh
in the
yes, they are.
yeah, they have like
I have
additional.
learned to ignore that. Um, just so for the folks out there thinking about what does rumination mean? Well, it's from the action of cows regurgitating, right, their food, and it's this action of regurgitating and then swallowing back again. So when you think about things that you've already done, and then you take them back in, so for further analyzing and digestion and all that kind of stuff. Exactly.
And
How
in
about
the
you?
and in the example you just gave, rumination is quite often also a habit, and it's linked to a trigger. So in this case, this particular social event, uh, just became the trigger to start this ruminating effort of thinking back and thinking back and thinking back. However, there's also rumination about events that are way in the back, way in the past. Maybe something even from childhood or a breakup, with a suboptimal partner and things like that. And people just think the same thing over and over and over, like essentially over a lifetime. It's this topic, this very repetitive, never-ending loop of thinking that is very, very unproductive and frankly exhausting. I like we are old enough to remember LPs, long play records, from back in the day, and those that had the possibility to actually have a record player and play them. If there was a scratch in that thing, the needle would jump and just stay in the same track, and it would just give you the exact same little 2 second soundbite over and over and over until you turned the thing off. And this is quite the same. You're just on a loop. And Actually, there's a thing called the circle of rumination, because it's literally the same thing. Maybe I should have, maybe I would have, what would have happened if I had done it differently, and why did he do it, and what could I have done differently? And it's just this incessant kind of thing. And I think a characteristic of rumination is that you literally stay stuck there, and there's just no pattern interrupt that allows you then to turn it into a more productive kind of thinking, right? And I think all of us at some point or another, we go into this ruminating mode, but for some folks it's really quite an everyday thing. And sometimes these people become our clients and come into coaching sessions just to repeat the same ingrained thought pattern. It's kind of like a path that you have gone down so many times that it's really well trampled out, right? And
Mhm.
you don't want to leave it. It's uncomfortable to leave it because, in certain essence, it becomes kind of like your friend. There's no surprises if you just go around the same loop all the time. Rumination. Yeah. So, have you had clients that were ruminators?
I've had more chronic thinkers, those that actually stay stuck in a thought, like intrusive thoughts. And those are the kinds that I really actually have the most. And intrusive thoughts, it's something that, they have in the moment that they start thinking about it because they just simply didn't have anything else to think about. I don't have those. I think I have more intrusive thought clients.
And they're related, I think, right? They're kind of unproductive thinking, and just
Yes.
also sometimes very reactive, right? I mean, you get triggered by something, and there you go again into the same thing.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
so it's very uncomfortable. Also for outsiders who are next to people that always just talk about the same thing. Actually, a thought comes to mind that we have these neighbors that are now elderly. They're over 80 years old. And
Mm.
no matter when we visit with them, it's always the same topic of discussion. Their health, their health,
Oh.
their health. This doesn't work. That doesn't work. This thing still doesn't work. That stuff still doesn't work, and so they get so preoccupied with just this one thing that it becomes this huge drama. I granted they are not in the best of health, but there's nothing else anymore that gets any kind of um, bandwidth in their thinking, but just this one thing. That too is a type of rumination because you get stuck there. You don't have other things. Even if you want to talk to them about maybe more uplifting things or other topics, the next sentence is going to be right back to
Mhm.
old ingrained thought patterns. So let's
You know,
say, yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. I'm just thinking right now that you said it. Yeah, they're old and uh, they're stuck in the same topic, but I think it's because they don't have much going on in their lives. But then I think about people like you and I, we have a business, we have clients, we have a social life, we have events going on, we have things going on. And so what makes us stuck in our thoughts? And I think and this is just a thought. Okay. So this is kind of ruminating, but not ruminating. So I'm starting to think what makes us start thinking about things, and it just came to me that the social environment that we're in, right, has so much to do as to why sometimes we ruminate, because we're so worried about the impact and how we influence others that we're constantly thinking about Did I cause a good impact? Did this person think good about me? Did I say this right? Did I do this right? And so I'm wondering if those factors, right, which is part of why we coach people, the importance that we give them, where we place them, is how we're going to recover from these thoughts, right? This is how we teach our clients. Let me put it in another way, because I was trying to say something and then I changed it. Um, if people were to learn that external factors, we give them so much importance that is why we ruminate more often than when we should, right? And when my clients come to me, I realize that most of their issues are because of expectations of others that they're trying to fulfill. I realized that with my mother's move, remember? With my mother's move, with my own expectations, uh, how I would be seen, even from people that would ask me in the future. Imagine to that extent I got to think, what would I tell Claudia, let's say that you would come to me and tell me, how's your mother's move? I would be worried that if I said something that I did, somebody or you would think, well, Sandra, I think you could have done better. That is what I'm trying to say. Our social expectations of others keep others from moving on, from getting unstuck.
And there it was, by the way. At least once shall we talk about assumption and expectation management. So we have checked that thing. Okay, so expectations. Yeah. However, I think I would like to be a little bit more precise in what at least my take is on rumination, because I don't think that every thinking, every analysis in order to learn, and every kind of raising of awareness in order to figure out how to behave or think in the future is rumination. That's just thinking, okay? And it is productive in that you try to analyze things, you try to project it into the future, and make it kind of, you want to analyze it in terms of self-growth. So that for me absolutely has no link at all to rumination. Rumination for me is literally more this repetitive being stuck in the same thoughts, the same thing coming back and back and back, unproductive. Because the thinking that you just said, even like, how would I explain my mother's move to others? How could I have done differently? How would I word it differently? It's just thinking and learning. And I would actually hope that my clients would do, or people in general would do more of that, okay? Ruminating is just as, it's unproductive because there's never any change. It's just the same question asked with the same answer given in this loop, really. It was written once, and it's this narrative that just keeps continuing. And I should have looked up some definitions, in the research papers about what people define as rumination. Unfortunately, I didn't. So it's just, and sometimes it's a friend, because to some folks I have noticed is going and thinking about that one thing again is kind of an avoidance mechanism. It's a thing to do, not to do other things, not to think about the stuff that could be changed, figuring out new ways of behavior, new goals and plans, and future-oriented kind of productive, forwards-moving kind of things in terms of self-development. It's kind of like this, even though it's a very bad one, but it's like this old friend, right? And you just talk the same thing over and
Yeah.
over. over. And so that being said, there's also it's a way of looking back, right? And this I would like to take as a segue maybe into the second part of our thing that we talked about, which is nostalgia. Well,
Mm,
nostalgia is also looking back, but on the other hand, it's something that gives us very often joy of the good old days, maybe some wistful kind of memories of good times we had, or maybe it was a tiny bit of regret or sadness of if I
mm.
had known it that that was really the really good time of my life, maybe I would have enjoyed it even more. But we have all been there. I love my first love dearly, but had I known that that was kind of the love story of my life, maybe I should have loved him even more and things like that.
Yep,
But
yep, yep, yep.
nostalgia. So what's your take on that nostalgia?
I have a different perspective than you, with all due respect. I was looking through some terms about nostalgia, rumination, intrusive thoughts, and thinking. Here's the thing: there's a fine line between intrusive thoughts and nostalgia or ruminating, and nostalgia and thinking. So the doctor was saying that some people don't see it as ruminating because some people do need to think about their actions, and that makes sense, right? The difference is that you get to think about what you did and you move on. That's thinking. Rumination is not having anything to do other than to think about the social constructs that are behind your behaviors and your actions. And then the action that I was saying, intrusive thoughts, those are the ones that never leave you, that are constantly attacking you, that even though you're doing something productive, they're stuck in your head and they come back to you and they say, yeah, but remember that party that you had the other day? You kind of overdid it. So now everybody's looking at you, and they kind of know that you drank a little bit too much, so you made a fool of yourself. And so those are the intrusive thoughts that are constantly coming to you. So it could be 6 months down the road, and that thought is still in your mind. That is an intrusive thought. And then for me, nostalgia, there's chronic nostalgia, and then there's nostalgia, and then there's, a little bit of grief, right? Because we were talking about grief the other day. So for me, nostalgia is when you, like you were saying, the boyfriend, and you start remembering, and the laugh comes out. Those are the good things, right? Those are the good times. Those are the memories that bring happiness to you. The problem is, like they say, all psychiatrists say, that's good. And even if you think about it 20 times a day, that's still good because those things are making you happy. Those things are the ones that are keeping you into doing things. The problem is the ones that keep you from doing things, right?
Right. I think the tone is very different. I think we would be able to agree that when you ruminate, it has a negative emotional charge associated with it, versus
Yes.
nostalgia is very often a pick-me-up. It's a positive or meaningful review of past experiences and so on. But even in the moment now, as we think back, we start smiling maybe, and maybe it also tells us about ourselves and our preferences, and about maybe
Yeah.
ways to change again, to maybe have the chance to relive it. Of course, you're not reliving
Yeah.
at 50 as you were at 20, but just to rekindle some of this. And I think it's a sentiment of possibility versus the ruminating as kind of very often a very disempowered kind of state. right? Disempowered kind of state. And so, rather than warm, it feels rather cool or cold. And, psychologically also how it makes you feel, one gets the endorphins flowing and the other one just literally shuts you down. I think we actually
Yeah.
feel it in our bodies. I also find that in my experience that a number of the people that were maybe suffering more from depression also sometimes get stuck in the cycle of rumination because they don't have the energy to pattern interrupt and maybe go into something else. But and I think that rumination keeps you probably more stuck in the past. Um, Even though nostalgia also, you look back at the past, but it can serve as a springboard to brighten the now, or go into more positive resource state to look into the future. So it's stuff that's very real, and it's I think that it's prevalent in a large number of people. There's degrees though, right? I mean,
Yeah.
there's degrees even in the amount of time people spend looking back, either positively or negatively, right? There's people that are very much past, turn towards the past, if the timeline were to go that way, turn towards the past. There's people just literally living in the moment, in the now, and then there's
Yeah.
others that are very aware and focused on looking into the future, right?
Mm-hmm.
Past is the past. I can't do anything. I might look back to learn from past experiences, but my outlook is in the future. What am I going to do in the
Exactly.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
coaches, I think we find that transformation does not happen in the past. Transformation,
Right.
personal development, leadership development, it happens in the now, but also while looking into the future.
Mm.
And so for us, when we have people that are very stuck in the past, ruminating constantly, and even those that are too nostalgic, always thinking about the good old days, always thinking about their youth, maybe that they can never get back. When the children were little, or whatever, always kind of looking at those things at defining moments in their time and getting their current pleasure from it, but not having true, meaningful pleasure and fulfillment in the now, and no plans of having any in the future because that's not where they're looking. It can be
Yeah.
detrimental to do that. So as coaches, or at least I, like to help people like that maybe explore
Mm.
what would it look like if maybe you weren't looking back as much? I'm not telling them it's a bad thing to do because that's none of my business, frankly. But
Right.
what what might it be maybe something good to do to be more in the moment or look more towards the future. And so it definitely fits into coaching, right?
Yeah.
And usually people come because the life that they're having has challenges. And the reason why it has challenges because they don't yet have within them the mindset or the tool set to cope and resolve the issues that are currently plaguing them. So they have to learn new things, they have to adjust their thinking in order to be able to manage the life as it is, or to build the life that they would like to have in the future.
Right.
And
Right.
to shift this viewpoint is is very important. And frankly, if I have people in front of me that are ruminators or just lose themselves in nostalgia, I said, okay, but what about doing it for a certain time rather than doing it all day long?
Right.
Can you maybe just go down that path for X amount of minutes, right? I mean,
Okay.
I'm going to tell you not to think about your first love. Think about your first.
No.
Maybe don't think about your first love all day long. And
Exactly. Exactly.
so,
Yes. I what I was reading, and you were saying something very important. What I was reading was that um the reason why some people ruminate is that they haven't built this tool that will help them with each trigger that causes them to ruminate, right? So I don't know how you do it, but one of the reasons one of the things that will help people is to say, okay, for trigger one, what have you created? Let's say you need to step outside and walk. You need to go out to watch people. You need to go and have a coffee with the girls as soon as you start thinking about something, or you need to go and have drinks with the guys and start talking about what is that, you have in mind, your plans, your family. You need to start creating some activities that are going to be productive for your brain so you get distracted. No, like you said, nobody's saying that you cannot think about this, but it gets to a point where it starts, you know, invading your day versus being something that is delightful, something that is inspirational for you to keep on and say, oh, okay, that was it. And now let's move on. Like you say, let's turn to this, like if that was the future. And then the other one is like, I would say that it's hard for people that are constantly ruminating because that just means that they have too much time in their hands. So now it's the time for people to create good habits. And what is that you need to question yourself? What is that you are doing with your time? How are you being productive with your brain? How are you being with yourself? In what state are you? What is your mood? What is causing that reaction in your body? And so there's all these other actions that we've talked about in the past about analyzing your mood, your statehood, how you're feeling, how you're thinking. What is that you were doing at that moment that caused that to happen and that memory to come out now? If we're talking about experiences, let's say somebody thinking about their best friend, or their best buddies or their little cats, dogs, whatever. It could be that they saw a doggy that looked like it. That's a thought, right? That is something that you see and you're like, oh, and then you move on, right? Because you're doing something else. So what I invite people to do is that if you find yourself not just thinking, but then in the evening go into that thought again, and then again, and then again, and then again, then start wondering, what is that I'm not doing that my brain feels that they need to go back into this thought constant, right? What am I missing? What do I need to fill my life with that I think I need to do, right?
and definitely, we need to figure out, um, how to positively live now, right? So you have some decisions to make, some new habits to.
Create.
On the other hand, I think that there's also some work to be done in putting or reducing the emotional charge associated with these past events.
Right.
I didn't say forget them because you won't,
Exactly.
but to reduce the emotional charge. Um, some people ruminate endlessly about a breakup or a divorce or the death of a loved one and things like that. And it's still as painful now as it was then. And
Yes.
that is kind of what gives this, what causes this rumination, because you never really got closure on it. And
Mm-hmm.
often the work is also, and in some extreme cases, I think it's not a job for a coach but a therapist. In some
In
extreme,
some extreme cases, yes. Mm-hmm.
in more, uh, and we know enough to be able to judge this, right? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
in some more normal cases, you could then literally challenge the negative emotions and the negative beliefs associated with that thing, and help the client to put it to bed, to decouple a little bit the actual event that happened from the associated emotional charge, and get that one more to a normal, acceptable level that is then not calling back into this rumination process about this all the time and all the time. And often it takes challenging limiting beliefs, it takes changes in perspective, it takes reorientation,
Mm-hmm.
balance. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying it's not just never happened, but maybe at some point you can then ask yourself, what did I learn from this? How did going through this make me a stronger person, because I'm here now and not over there anymore? So
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I was able to move on, maybe not perfectly, but I was able to move on and become a little bit more constructive, and then move into the phase of literally seeking solutions. Like, if the same trigger comes, or I start to dwell again on this past experience, how and to what can I shift my focus? Okay, what are manageable steps that I maybe have written down and can remind myself to do, or to try doing, as I try to move away from this and learn to manage this a little bit again. Because especially habitual ruminations on the same topic are just that, habits. And
Mm-hmm.
we unlearn certain habits, and then maybe stack others on top that are more productive. And
Mm-hmm.
part of it starts with awareness. Some people ruminate or get lost in nostalgia, how fun and happy it makes us, get stuck there because they're not even aware they're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They might have spent 3 hours thinking in loops about the exact same thing, and they have no idea that they were doing it. Our mind is very insidious that way.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
Remember, our brain is not our friend. And so I think it really starts with awareness and mindfulness of what state we're in and what we're actually doing. And also, just the fact that just because a thought pops into our head doesn't mean it's right, or we need to continue thinking it.
Right.
Right?
I'm wondering if the reason why we ruminate is because we are unsatisfied. I'm sorry, unsatisfied with something. You know, I'm wondering if the dissatisfaction is to such a level our present life that we find ourselves having to reach out to those thoughts to make us happy. I mean, that's really what we're doing, right? So I'm thinking, I'm thinking about something, and when you were asking about thoughts that we have, and for me, it's when I had my two dogs. I mean, you've seen them; they're huge dogs. Okay, I'm supposed to be happy with two dogs, but yet I would be thinking constantly about my little ones that passed away, and I mean constantly. And I realized that something was missing, even though I had my two gorgeous, because they're just gorgeous. They're the best behaved dogs that I've had. well, no, but in the present. Yeah, to each their own, right? To each their own. Otherwise, the other ones are going to be like, "What is supposed to be?" Right now they're the best behaved doggies that I have. But something was missing, and I would be constantly thinking about my other doggies, and then I realized I needed more. I needed something else to fill me up. And it wasn't until now that I have these four huge dogs that I feel satisfied. I feel happy. I feel I'm over my head sometimes. I'm going to admit it, but they make me happy. And now when I think about my doggies that passed away, it's like, oh, but that's it. It's a thought. It's a memory,
Right.
right? And so that's why I wonder, is it because we're missing something in the present that makes us reach out to the past, right? So that we can either be better or do better.
Right.
Hopefully.
And I think that touches on something very powerful, is that nostalgia or nostalgic thoughts are very strong indicators of what we like. Because there was
Mhm.
obviously something there that we liked that made us happy or fulfilled, that makes us go back there. So for me, a nostalgic thought is a huge data point, a very important data. And I would literally take it and extract values and maybe even themes. Maybe a number of the nostalgic thoughts that we have are kind of along a certain theme, right? And so um, then once we know what this theme is, then really turn around again and consider the present and maybe the close future and say, how can I create a reality in my life now that incorporates some of these lived values and themes, right?
Mhm.
And it was a matter of dogs. I would love, for instance, to have a more loyal kitty cat. We
Yeah.
adopted two last year. They're wonderful cats. But they're skittish. They weren't socialized properly when they were little, and
Mm.
they perfectly fine being in the apartment and not saying hi the entire day, which, is in stark contrast to the Siamese that I had a few years ago. And, she was with us until she turned 23, and she was always on me. She was just this bundle of affectionate love, right? And I miss that. And I miss that. So, maybe that means that I will need to get another cat at some point. Maybe that's just what it is. They can't destroy the apartment any more than what they already have. There's that. Uh, but I think that it's very strong nostalgia or nostalgic thoughts for me are very strong indicators, and about things that we are missing, like you
Mhm.
said. We need to think back to that because we don't have it in some other form or fashion in the current thing. Granted, some things might not necessarily happen the same way again. Okay, like a lot of people have youth, right? They become nostalgic about their youth and maybe the way that they looked or the way that they felt or moments in time that they had, were able to spend freely or didn't have that many responsibilities in life, right?
Mm.
Once you're all grown up and settled and you have bills to pay and things like that, it's a different lifestyle. And but there again, there are data points, and in the end, all this data will get us to a point where we have to make choices.
Yeah.
If it turns out that for us, freedom is a very high value, a very
Mhm.
strong, maybe I have to, to the extent possible in the ecology of our systems, okay,
Mhm.
just get rid of some stuff, become a digital nomad, um, find that freedom in certain ways, right? It's
Mm-hmm.
data points. And then, it's always the client's choice whether they just think about it
Mm-hmm.
or want to resolve it and maybe even do something about it, right? I mean, that's
Right.
body's choice because ruminating or continuing to ruminate is also a choice. Being happy through nostalgic thoughts is also a choice. Or taking
Yes.
action and trying to transform and learning to cope and learning to manage and learning new habits is also a choice.
Right. Right. Um, maybe for some other time, but there's also the ones that bring traumas and all this kind of stuff. We're not psychologists. I'm not a psychologist, but there's other kinds that I personally could not touch bases on, right? Or want to talk about because I don't have knowledge over them. But there's a lot of videos out there on YouTube that would educate a lot of people out there if they want to know more information about that, but I'm talking, we're talking about the simple ones, the ones that we usually go through as normal human beings. And then we let a psychologist or psychiatrist break it down and tell us, well, this is the one you have, and this is the one you have. And you're like, oh, okay, well, that's good to know. But this is what we're going through.
Refer to YouTube as a source of information about
Yes,
mental health. If you feel that
yes.
it has gotten out of hand, that you cannot get
Yeah.
your emotions and things like that out of hand, you can start with a coach, and every competent coach that is professional and adheres to ethical guidelines that coaches do will, if they cannot help you, they will refer you. They will not refer you, but they will say to you, listen, I think this might be something where maybe a therapist or a psychiatrist might be more uh, helpful to you. And then again, it's the client's choice, right, to do.
Mm-hmm.
But
Mm-hmm.
things that we will not touch, and because obviously, if somebody is struggling from PTSD or whatever, it's not a simple mind shift change, or it's not building new habits that are necessarily going to help with all of it, right? You might need medication, you might need therapy.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that,
Yes.
thank you for bringing that up. This is more like, I have these repetitive negative
Yeah.
thoughts. I constantly think back of better times because, those kind of things, But
Right.
you see them a lot.
Let's talk about also something that does happen with those kind of situations, right? Whether it's ruminating, whether it's intrusive thought, whether it's whatever it is that you're going through, either one can lead also to burnout. Because somebody was trying to explain what is the best way to explain burnout. And they said, well, burnout is something that you are so passionate about that you want to do it so often and so much that you just end up exhausted because you love it, you like it too much. And so what happens when an intrusive thought or a ruminative thought or melancholic thought or whatever you want to call it, what happens when you're constantly thinking about them? Well, sometimes, just sometimes, talking about the ones that are not so very good, um, you kind of start obsessing over something. You can obsess over something by just doing those simple thoughts. And you kind of start thinking, well, okay, let's think about something that could be positive, but then can be a little bit extreme. Um, Exercise. You can say, well, I remember that 10 years ago, I would fit in these jeans, and you still have them, right? And it could be a positive thing. You can either start going to the gym again and doing the same routine, or you can overdo it and then cause yourself some kind of problem with your health. So that's a burnout because you are so passionate now about getting into your size 5 or 3 or whatever. Sorry. Oh, thank you. A little bit cold here. Thank you, thank you. That you can overdo it, right? And so it's a passion, but it can become to be an obsessive thought or an intrusive thought where you're constantly thinking, I used to be a size 3, I need to be a size 3, I have to be a size 3 again because maybe a high school reunion is coming up, you know? So
Yeah, that was your trigger. And that plays then into because those are, for instance, things that a coach can help with. You
mhm,
identify, body awareness issues. You look at the reality of other things. You look how you define yourself, and so on, and how much is that really playing into your personality? What other accomplishments do you have, and so on. So you explore a little bit the way that you show up to this reunion, irrespective maybe of your weight. I'm not saying don't
mhm,
go to the gym, but you just explore different options. But
yes,
I wouldn't necessarily go that far and say that all burnout is based on some positive passion, because we all have heard of just overdoing it at work, and
right.
maybe because there was some extrinsic negative influences there, more stick than carrot. And, everything I think done to the extreme is going to lead to states of just, you're burnt out. There's no energy left in the tank, and that you can't replenish it. And at some point, you just crash and burn, right?
Mhm, mhm,
So I think that but you're right. These different things can, if they become too much part of your thing, really cause damage. If
mhm,
you read so much that you can't sleep at night because these thoughts are going round and round and round all night, and you start developing a case of insomnia that goes on for weeks or months, you are going to burn out, right?
mhm,
So
mhm.
these are very real things, and thankfully help is available. Maybe the
That's
coach
right.
is able to help you. Maybe you might need to go to a therapist or a psychiatrist, but there
Right.
is available. This is something that is manageable.
Yes.
Like I said before, it starts with the awareness. Oh, that is what's going on. That is what I'm doing. That's unproductive.
Correct.
I didn't think that being so nostalgic or melancholic would be a big deal in the end. For me, it was just fun. But maybe it impacts your everyday life in ways that are suboptimal. Maybe because you're doing that, thinking about your first love, you're not focusing on your current family.
That's a good
Right?
point.
And just because you still hang to these ideas of maybe the professional woman that you were in your early 30s, and now you have a different job with maybe less responsibility or whatever, because that is your ideal. Now all of a sudden you can't show up properly to work now. So
Mhm,
all these things have very concrete and practical applications. And
mhm.
so I mean, what would be the one thing you think that folks should take away from today's session?
I think that the best thing that people can do is what we slightly have touched on, but that you finally right here at the end have talked about again, which is think about where you are right now and ask yourself, what am I missing in my life? Right? Ask yourself the right question. Don't ignore what are the reasons as to why you're thinking what you're thinking, but rather think about what am I missing right now that I need that makes me go into this thought. And maybe it could be really, really that you're not missing anything other than just a smile, right? But it is still something to think about. Just don't overthink it.
And I mean, we touch on a lot of different little things, but for me, again, I would think that both rumination and nostalgia, for me, would I would use them as sources of insight and motivation. Use it
Mhm,
mind, really take a look,
mhm,
and try to use this data to redirect rumination in particular to problem solving and
mhm,
growth.
mhm.
Take the positive, like the positive emotions and the values associated with nostalgia, to use it as the fuel towards your
Exactly, to the heart. Yeah.
life. And then it brings you back into the now, uh, and it carries you then into the future in a
That's
productive way. So
right.
maybe, just
Love
maybe,
it.
a point to close it for today. What do you think?
I love it. I love it. I think, yeah, that's a good way to end.
Okay, fantastic. Good one today. Good one. Rumination and nostalgia. Yeah.
Thank you, Claudia. It was a lovely show. Thank you for talking with me today.
Good hair days today. So,
Yes, today was a good hair day. Yes, it is.
hey, everybody, thank you so much for listening. We were actually, 5 minutes short this time around, imagine. But for everybody listening to the end, thank you so very much. I
Yes,
hope you found some good, valuable insights in here.
yes,
So I are both available as coaches. You can get back to us with your questions, comments,
right,
suggestions, whatever. You can find us on social
right.
media. And our contact information is in the description associated with this video. Also, if you like the content and would like to show us a little bit of love, please subscribe to the channel, click like, or otherwise engage with our content. That would be fantastic. And do tell your friends. Okay,
Thank
so
you.
you take care, and I
You
will see
too.
you. Bye bye.
Bye.